Yeah, I think that's the slightly older leaves off now, Mrs. W.
Yeah.
You can probably see here we've got some nice fresh growth that's coming up from the celery.
Yeah, there's still some to harvest.
Yeah. And if you remember, I transplanted these at the end of November last year into this polytunnel. And you can see it's been a success. We've been having fresh celery all through December, January and February. And I remember I posed that question when we put it in here. But yeah, we literally did continue to have nice fresh celery through February, and now we're into March. What I don't know is how long it will keep going and when it's likely to flower. So I'm leaving it anyway, because these lovely new shoots, as I say, we're still being able to have nice celery. One thing that didn't make it to air in our last sowing video was actually when we sowed the celeriac, we also sowed our celery seeds, which were it's what this one is. It's the golden self-blanching. That video was already running quite long, so it was one of the things that we left out, and so I thought I'd just mention it now so that you know they were sown at the same time, right at the end of February. March is a great time to be sowing your celery, indeed your celeriac. But as I said in that Sow With Us late February video, I would sow these before mid-March, because they do have quite a lot of growing to do before they can actually become big enough plants, strong enough plants to go out into your plots. So these are the slightly older stems that I've taken off the plant initially to tidy up the plant, and ordinarily I would use them because they've still got quite a bit of crunch to them.
Yes, yeah, they'd be fine to use in like a stock or a trivet or something, more for flavouring. They wouldn't be so good to eat fresh, they'd be a bit stringy, I think.
Yeah, but that's not where these are destined for today, because these are going to help kickstart our hot composter. And in today's video I shall be sharing with you our ingredients and ratios to how we make our hot compost. Hello and welcome back to the No Dig Norfolk Gardener. I've read and watched lots of things when it comes to compost. And really, you know, compost is quite simple. It doesn't need to be complicated. Really, all you need is the ingredients. You need some greens and you need some browns. Something like the celery stalks that I've just picked, they're regarded as greens, so is grass clippings, so is the horse manure that I've managed to acquire. Whereas the browns tend to be the more shrubby stuff, twigs, leaves, cardboard, shredded newspaper, can all be used and can go into your composter. Once you're familiar with what's green and what's brown, really all you need to do is to aim roughly for a 50-50 mix. It's the beginning of March here in our Norfolk No Dig garden. The grass has been actively growing for the last week or two. Had a mild winter. So actually our lawns have just had their first cut. That means for us it is composting season, because the moment these lawns start to grow and we can cut the grass, that gives us that material to be able to make our compost. There are many ways you can make compost. It doesn't have to be in a hot bin, it could be in a cold compost bin. But the way you go about making it really isn't so different, and you really don't need to get that hung up about it. In a cold composter, I've always found it best to use what they call the lasagna method, which is different layers of the materials. I normally put a layer of about that much, 5 to 6 inches of each material, and keep stacking it up. And you find as it rots down, it actually starts to sink down. So start filling it up again until it gets to the point where it settles at one point. Then you can let that do its thing. Once you've finished adding material to it, certainly within a month to 6 weeks, we then turn it into the next bay. And then there it will stay to finish ripening until we need it, November of the year, when we start to spread our compost. And just by turning it once, what you'll be able to do is the outside of the materials can come into the middle, same with the bottom will come up to the top, so that you actually get some even composting. The other thing I would say about cold composting, you want a fairly sizable heap. Otherwise you simply won't get any heat in it, or at least not enough. And we've found over the years that actually pallets are the best thing to use. You normally put them together for me, don't you?
I do, yeah. Just simply tie them together, really. I don't even screw them together.
The only important thing to remember with pallets is to make sure that they've not been treated with anything bad, so that that's not going to leach into your compost pile. And the other thing you always do for me, Mrs. Double, is that you line them, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Some people say you're better off leaving it. Some people say you're better off lining it. We've actually found we're better off lining it. It does help keep the heat in. We tend to find there's enough air gets into it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, how do we make our compost in the hot composter bin? With it being the first cut of the year, there's not a huge amount of grass that's come off because I've kept the blades high. You don't want to be scalping your grass in the first place. It's also been extremely wet over the last few days. So moisture in this case is not an issue. Now, the grass box that goes on our lawnmower collects 40 litres of grass. And generally, once it's full, I'll use half of it and put it into my wheelbarrow. So that will do 2 lot that I will add to the hot composter. But with this only being a very light mowing this year, I've only got half a grass box full. So absolutely ideal. And then I'll start to add other things to it. These are these celery trimmings, or these are these celery harvests that are picked off that we no longer want to use. We want to use the fresh growth that it's throwing up. Anything green is going to help heat hot composter up, full of nitrogen. And then here are some kitchen scraps from the last few days that Mrs. W has been using. Some eggshells. I'll just break those up, because this will break down the eggshells. And then in they can go. And then we're going to add some brown, which in our case is some brown shredded shrubby material that a local gardener got for us.
That was last summer, wasn't it? We popped that through our shredder. Looks really good. Smells actually quite nice as well, doesn't it?
Does, yes,
Yeah.
smells just like the forest, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
really
And actually, if you look closely, you can see that it's been, because that still had the leaves on it, it's actually been composting while it's been,
Yeah.
it's already started going before we even use it,
Yeah.
which is amazing. Now, hopefully you're seeing a theme here. Unlike the cold composter where you're, to all intents and purposes, making lasagna, with a hot composter, you want things well mixed. Here's some shredded up paper, and as well as us, we've got a shredder that we shred our own paper up with. These actually came from the youngest boy, didn't it?
Yeah, he shreds his paper for us, doesn't he?
He's
Every little helps.
Oh yes, and especially as he's actually getting ready to move house, isn't
Yes,
he?
he is, yeah.
An ideal way to get rid of some things
stuff,
and not
yeah.
take it with him.
Exactly.
So here's our nice new hot bin, and for those of you that made your own, hopefully it looks something like this. You can see that the drainage holes are there in order that we can catch that lovely compost tea. And the first thing we need to do to get this going is actually just to put some twigs on the bottom. They don't need to be anything special, and they're not particularly to compost. That's just to help with the airflow. And then the simple act of adding your mix. And then we just keep adding to it week after week after week after week. And really what you need to be to make good compost is a scrounger. Look around your local area. That's all I've done. In fact, within the distance of about 1 mile from the village where we live, we've got sources of grass. Mrs. W, while she was at work, was it Thursday? No, Friday, wasn't it? Mowed this person's lawn. But she just took a bag with her, and we've got a bag full of lawn clippings, which I'm now going to use. And then this comes from a local gardener. And I call him up every few months and say, I can do another load, John. He brings it to our house, and I just barrow it up here. If it needs shredding, then I'll shred it. If you're lucky enough, they may shred it for you. And of course, all these materials are free. The grass clippings, and the shrubbery bits, and actually when he's cutting lawns as well, he'll bring the lawn clippings around for us and drop them off in our garden. If you do garden in your back garden, think of your neighbours. Certainly our neighbours, most of their back garden, unlike ours, is to lawn. And you know how long our gardens are. So again, when they're mowing the lawn, they got the gardener come around, just leave a dustbin there, can you put the clippings in there for us, we'll use it. It's great for them because actually you suddenly rock up, certainly here in the UK, down to your local tip. You know, with Fred Blogg's gardening services, I think, hang on a minute, we need to charge you for this. So actually it's beneficial for them to be able to give it away to people like ourselves, and it's beneficial to us because we can make lots and lots of the black gold. Good idea as you're tipping it in to make sure that there's none on top of these edges, because otherwise when you put the lid on there'll be a gap, and that will let the valuable heat that you're trying to generate to aid with the composting process. And then what I then do is just to add a little bit of an existing compost pile into the hot bin, because this already has all the life in it that can help begin the breakdown process more quickly. And these bins work really well once they are half full. So you can begin the process if you don't have enough to half fill it, but it's not going to get to the high temperatures that you really want. They start approaching that as they become half full. What was it, 2 wheelbarrow loads of the greens and the browns? That's half filled that.
Yeah.
Now that will settle down because it will start to compost, well, within the next couple of hours once we put the lids on. And we shall show you the sort of temperatures it's getting to, and we'll come back and look at it tomorrow. We'll pop the thermometer in there. Lid on, nice and tight. There we are. You can see that it's not even a day old and it's already up to nearly 40 degrees. And that'll only keep climbing until it gets into the ideal round about 55 degrees. That's as simple in composting can be. You can make it as difficult as you like. You can add all sorts of things to it. But just always remember, become a scrounger, try to get an even mixture of greens and browns, and then let nature do the rest. And you saw when we opened up the bin, just a day later, the temperature is really quite high. The next time that we should look at that will be in 30 days' time, so just as we go into April. And we'll talk about things a bit more. I know we haven't said anything about water. Generally we don't add water to it, but what we have found that in the summer months, we sometimes need to, because that does generate quite hot temperatures. And we've had compost come out at the end where it's been quite dry, haven't we?
Some of it has, yeah.
So then when we've transferred it to our cold composting bays, we've just sprinkled some water on it. When we get to that point, which will be part 3 of this series of hot bin composting, we'll tell you all about it. Now, if you already hot compost, do you do the same things as we're doing, or do you have a different method? As always, we do love to get your comments. Do have a great gardening week, and we shall see you on the next one.